but to China, altogether more dangerous even than Russia. In Australia, we've been slow to wake up to the fact that China really is a brutal dictatorship and it really does aim for world domination. You see how it's been bullying us. And one way it's done that is to get into our universities. For instance, China's recruited dozens of Australian scientists to its international program in which they get academics to sign away their intellectual property that's, in this case, has been built up here with Australian grants. And we also find Australian scientists, Australian universities have been helping researchers in China connected to their military. The Morrison government's now trying to tighten oversight of just what agreements our cash-hungry universities are making with a dictatorship that could one day turn its weapons against us. In New Zealand, one academic in particular has also tried to warn that country of the threat. She's University of Canterbury Professor Anne-Marie Brady, who with two Chinese co-authors wrote a paper warning New Zealand's parliament that several New Zealand universities and companies have strategic partnerships with Chinese companies such as Iffletech, Huawei and Guangxi Science, who work closely with the Chinese military and state security sector. Now, Brady knows the cost of standing up to China and warning others. She's been threatened. Her car's been tampered with. She's had her home and office burgled many times, just her laptops and phones taken. And it's easy to get paranoid when that happens, and there were even fears at first of something suspicious when her two co-authors were in a fatal car smash. One of them died as they brought their petition about this China business to Parliament to warn of China. Now, I don't blame China for that accident, but among all the harassment that Professor Brady would have thought would be coming her way, I doubt she would have dreamed that her own university would now turn against her. It started a secret complaints process against Brady after two universities sent secret complaints against her about a report. They claim it contains errors, which they haven't spelled out, not publicly. But 120 top China experts have now signed a joint letter saying they, who do know this area, can see no manifest errors or misleading inferences based on the evidence material provided in Brady's report. And they've said to Canterbury University, we ask that you issue a prompt and full apology to Professor Brady. I spoke a short while ago to Professor Brady's lawyer, Stephen Franks. Stephen Franks, thank you so much for your time. I can't talk to Professor Brady herself for this interview. Why is that?
Her university put a gag on her, told her that she wasn't allowed to talk about the proceeding. They justified it by reference to some privacy interests, hers, which she promptly waived, and that of some of the other individual complainants, or in fact they said all the complainants, but they've now acknowledged that the two universities that have complained don't have privacy interests.
And then again, I can't know who actually did complain about her. Why is that?
Well, it's the same thing that we're very keen that this be dealt with as the university says that it is, a matter of academic freedom, a question of academic freedom and whether there are restraints on that. And Professor Brady's anxious not to give anyone an excuse to turn it from that matter of principle into some kind of argument about whether as an employee she's obliged to follow their orders, even if they are infringement on free speech.
This sounds a little bit like the Chinese justice system. You don't know, you're not allowed to know what's said, who's said, identities, the charges, the process, nothing. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Why don't the universities who claim that there are errors in what Professor Brady wrote simply issue their own public rebuttal instead of sneaking in the shadows to try to get her muzzled? Well,
it does look like this is not, it's not in this sphere alone. I mean, the universities are hotbeds now of cancel culture, where instead of engaging in debate, you go and try and get the authorities to throw their weight around ostensibly to protect people from being offended. This may be just, it may have been a natural reaction for the universities to think we don't need to engage, we don't need to rebut publicly, we can just get someone to put the employer squeeze on her. But to truth be told, it's not easy for us to tell. I mean, we don't really know why her work is said to involve arguments about academic freedom at all. It's highly respectable. She's a world recognised authority, and the work that's complained about was actually requested by a committee of the New Zealand Parliament and submitted to them as a report.
This is just so extraordinary. What do the complainants actually want done with Brady? I mean, if she said something they don't agree with, I would have thought you just issue a statement saying these are the facts, she's wrong, and you know, end of argument. That's how academia is meant to work. But what do they actually want done in the dark to her?
One of them wants her to recant and to repudiate her manifest errors, but they're so manifest that we can't work out what they are. They really
they wanted her to recant, like a sign of self-criticism, again, Chinese style, sign of self-criticism. Is that what they want?
Yeah, well, I think those of us who are outside the university be a little unaware until you bump into it, just how close to the struggle sessions that the universities are getting. I should say, in my immediate post-university days, I went to China and tried to be allowed to go and live on a commune. So watching all this has a certain irony at this stage of life.
It's so extraordinary, and it's so actually quite sinister. What does this process tell you, this whole process? What does it tell you about the state of academic freedom and just free speech in New Zealand, and why should we care?
Oh, I think it is very sinister. I think it's very worrying. It's worrying that the people didn't have an instinct that said, this is ludicrous, we will become a laughingstock in the world if we complain and try to get her suppressed instead of telling where we think this is incorrect and just using applying the normal academic process, as you mentioned it. There's constantly argument about inference and selection of facts and whether people have drawn the wrong conclusions, and that's how research and knowledge improves, because someone then rebuts it and someone then publishes a counterclaim. But to try and suppress it is much more. It's much more like the way churches used to act. You know, our new clerics are in the universities, and they want the power to say what is permissible to say and what isn't. So I think from inside it possibly looks like a logical extension of where they're going. From us outside, it's not only ridiculous, but it's really worrying.
Stephen Franks, thank you so much for your time, and all strength to you and to Professor Brady. Stick it out.
Thank you.